Hey everybody, it's Mark Hanna, Hot Thunder. This is the final video I'm coming up on the Axis Empire's Red Pill series, I guess you could call it. This is all related to the first two videos that I had posted on BGG about the issue of collective group behaviors, you can call it that, that sort of thing. But essentially, I'm not going to be posting this on BGG this time. I'm just going to put a note that the third video is available. That's because I did have a question from one of the observers of the video 2. I don't actually know if this person, I don't think this person actually did watch the video, but he asked, what on earth, bro, does this have to do with Axis Empires? So, tongue-in-cheek little question, and probably if he hadn't watched the videos or paid attention to the thread, he wouldn't know. Video 2 did include a slight blurb for an upcoming Axis Empires episode that I'm going to do on a playthrough, so that's my justification. This one won't have that. The person wasn't really paying attention to the whole thing. He was just wondering, why is all this stuff up there as videos? So, that way I'm going to move this topic completely away from BGG because it is more of a generic topic at the end. There are a couple of other pointed questions. I'm going to try to keep this away from individuals, but there are some pointed questions by a couple of people, so in those cases they will be answered individually. Let me move on to the presentation. Okay, I'm going to try to get this presentation right so I'm not covering up the words this time. I don't want to do this more than once, though. I do have a lot to cover. I'm going to try to make it as succinctly as, express myself as succinctly as I possibly can. So basically, this last video is about the group behavior of circling the wagons. Now, as I said before, I want to step back from the individual arguments that I had been discussing a little bit back and forth in the comments in the forum. I never really wanted to get it on the forum. But as I was kind of extracting myself from it, there were still people using the forum who didn't want to go to YouTube and comment there. Why, I do not know. Probably didn't want to give any recognition of my efforts by commenting on my video. Whatever, gentlemen. Okay, gentlemen and ladies, if there are any. So, the discussion began as a critique of the 1944 scenario, the very what I consider to be a poor submission by the designers and developers of that scenario, because there's a lot of broken setups in there. And then what followed revealed something larger than the rules here, which is a recurring group dynamic. And that's something I wanted to comment on, because it's not just in Axis Empires that I've seen this, but all over the place. And there's a certain psychological pattern to forum behaviors. And I'm not going to say I didn't engage in it. I was accused by somebody, oh, you don't practice what you preach. Well, everybody gets sucked into this. This is just how forums operate. That's why I moved this whole thing to video, because I wanted to get out of the forum for this discussion. All right. So what do we mean by circling the right? Oh, I should give you a little bit of background about myself first. Someone accused me of not having enough credentials to discuss psychology, so here's my educational background. I've got a degree in electrical engineering, a master's in business administration. That was in the Ivy League. I got the Master of Science at Cornell University, an Ivy League school. I had been in a doctoral psychology program, and I had completed the approval of the thesis process and passed the final dissertation, as well as the oral exam board, which is conducted by 4 doctorates who fire questions at you. I ran out of funding to complete the PhD, so I did get offered a master's degree in psychology instead. So those are my background and credentials, only mentioned because someone was telling people that I offer fake psychology information. Well, not really. All right, so that's that. That's all that is about. Okay, so back to circling the wagons. It's a 19th century idiom. It's an idiom. It's a frontier defensive formation. I think everybody knows that if they're from the United States. We arranged the wagons. We, as if we were settlers, arranged the wagons in a circle for protection. At night, it was a survival mechanism, and it's now used to represent when people decide to set up defensive structures in groups, and particularly in smaller groups. This becomes an issue of, let's say, tribal behaviors. Okay, what is a tribe? Now, I did have a question about this. Uh, so somebody questioned me here. What was that question? Um, so here's the modern meaning of circling the wagons. It's a defensive group consolidation. It's rather insular. It filters out external criticism and reasoning, even prioritizing internal unity over group evaluation from a larger context or a larger group. Insofar as this tribal organization in BGG, let me just say that BGG itself is not a tribe. There are too many people in it. Anthropologically, sorry, I had a hard time saying that's early here. Need more coffee. But anthropologically, this means a group of about 60 people to maybe 100 people in a small, tight-knit group functioning for survival purposes. However, the modern meaning of a tribe, so this was the comment somebody decided they thought they needed to give. Okay. So now it's not a lot of people that are rejecting you, Mark, I guess is what he was saying. First, it was a whole tribe. Now it's just a few people. All right, let me get into this. Just quickly, a tribe is not a large group of people in the context of a group formation like this. Also, not everybody in the tribe speaks out. It's only the vocal ones that do. And those are the ones who are trying to direct the direction of the tribe. So if a few people gather up and say they don't agree with me, that's what it is. It's a few people, and yeah, they're still part of the tribe. Okay, that's what it means. So it's just another example of not paying attention. I mean, essentially, you know, it was clear during the videos what I meant by tribe as a small group, and I was not talking about the entire tribe. That was somebody that you decided to say was many people, or many people are disagreeing with you. I don't care. Well, first of all, I want to point out that if there is one truth and 100 people or 1,000 people disagree with me and I support the truth, it doesn't matter what the other 1,000 people think or feel. And it doesn't matter if that's how they think or feel and pass that on for the next 1,000 years, because eventually the truth will come out. So it's kind of irrelevant in that sense, in the bigger, larger sense, which is what this whole discussion is trying to be about. Okay, so what I have noticed is that there was a prioritization of internal unity over evaluation. And why is that? Well, that's because everyone was saying the same kind of language, the same jargon. Don't worry about it. This isn't a big thing to worry about. This is not a problem. Somebody will fix this eventually. This kind of language. It's not satisfactory to me. It needs to be fixed more soon than you think as soon, whatever that means to be for you guys. The Axis Empire's tribe, when they start talking about soon, because they don't want to give deadlines for anything. I won't blame that solely on the Axis Empire's developers, because that's something a lot of these developers probably should say instead of giving deadlines, because none of them can seem to meet their deadlines on these game designs. It's quite funny. All right, so, but there's a tendency to filter out external criticism because they don't want that. They don't want the disharmony or something. This is a very common theme on BGG, especially in a group of people who like a particular game. People who like the game hang out in the chat room. It's not the people, or in the forum. It certainly isn't the people who don't like the game, because they don't want to waste their time talking about it. Okay, so there's this critical variation of claiming openness to this discussion, but then framing, there's a framing or a projection of alignment as some kind of collaboration. Um, I wanted to elaborate on this in some detail because, you know, up until the moment where this change occurs, the exchange is framed as an evaluation of a rule or scenario design in question. And in fact, what I said was I wasn't getting my money's worth. That's what I was saying. Okay. There, the stated posture was openness. What do you guys think? That sort of thing. Um, and what I got was sort of bits and pieces that were the, well, don't worry about it kind of mentality. Then one guy chimed in saying, oh, well, there actually wasn't any playtesting of the 1944 scenario anyway. And so how this all got started at that point was I went to do a quick search. I didn't do an extensive search with AI to determine when the playtesting had been started for these 44 scenarios. And I did find out a lot of information about it, but I just generally said, look, it had been playtested. And even if it hadn't been playtested, by the way, that wasn't my point. That would just emphasize how bad the thing is in the second place. So the first place, it had been playtested, so presumably this mistake had been caught. But if they had published it without playtesting, that's another violation of quality. But none of you guys brought that up, okay? The guy was like, well, we didn't really. It never was really playtested in the last X number of years. So what's your point, though? That has nothing to do with the main point that I made. Okay, so that's when I decided to veer off. I had seen this kind of chat room collaboration before. I say chat room. It's a forum, but it's the same kind of thing. And people hang out together. They agree together, blah, blah, blah. And so I decided to bring it to the videos. At that point, I left that particular conversation because I told everybody, okay, that's it. I'm done here. I'm going to start doing videos on this. I was absolutely clear. That didn't stop people, though, from continuing to post about it and then expecting me to answer to certain things. What they failed to pay attention to was that I told people that I had left that chat room. I was no longer in it, so they should have paid attention to the fact that I was posting videos. They chose not to. That's not my fault. That's theirs. Anyway, so going back into this, so I've got a couple notes here because I do want to make sure I get this right. I normally don't do this kind of scripting, but in this case I am. So the focus moved from is this scenario consistent? Is this consistent with other scenarios? To is this criticism appropriate? And that's when people were saying, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it, which points to the fact that they thought it was an inappropriate criticism to expect what I paid for to be honored. Okay. So that was the shift in the deviation. Okay. Whether this was conscious or not, or a group think or not, doesn't really matter. It may not be conscious. The system responds to a perceived disturbance of the harmony of the group. Majority agreement then begins to function as a loyalty signal to others. That's what was going on. You guys were giving loyalty signals to others in a cohesive fashion. Okay. Alignment with the dominant position is implicitly associated with being constructive, cooperative, or community-minded. Okay. It looks like reasonable collaboration, but it's not. The agreement among those 4 or 5 people that do speak up in the chat room feels stabilizing, and the stabilization feels virtuous. There's a lot of virtue signaling going on. Dissent, which is, of course, me, disagreeable me, okay. Dissent at that point in time begins to feel disruptive, and the critique is going to be reframed, okay. Not examining the purity as a rules question or a quality question, but evaluated in terms of tone, escalation, or social impact. The focus shifts from, is the rule structurally sound? Is the scenario structurally sound? Do we deserve our money for this? To, why is this a big deal? Okay, why is this being pushed so strongly? You should be quiet. Everybody else agrees. What's wrong with you? Okay, that's kind of where it goes. That's where the critical deviation or variation occurs. Once the system moves into this defensive mode, okay, returning to, what I'd say, pure evaluation becomes difficult because the discussion is no longer operating in the same analytical framework. The slide is not about assigning motive to the people who are doing this in the so-called tribal group. It identifies a predictable group dynamic where a system is disturbed. Remember what I said about homeostasis. Living organisms and human minds and groups try to make a situation as stable as possible for survival, even if it's just a perceived survival. There's nothing really associated with survival here per se, except for the survival of egos. All right. The key takeaway here is the conversation then has shifted mode, all right, from an analytical evaluation to a cohesive protection. Now, if you're working with a bunch of people who don't get ego-based, they will respond to you. They will not address this as if it's some kind of invasion or ridiculous proposal. They'll actually look at it from an evaluative standpoint rather than point to everybody else and saying, see, they all agree with me. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you agreeing with me? All right. So that brings me to questions 3 and 4. And what'll be interesting for me is to find out if this person who is a known hostile to me in the chat room, he certainly demonstrates, he, she, whatever you are, does not like me. So any little thing that can be pointed out, regardless of what the argument is, that's the only thing this individual ever focuses on, is trying to find fault with one minor point. Okay, and so in this particular case, one of the questions was, let's see, where are these questions? All right. So, and now this is after 2 videos and a bunch of commentary has been produced. Okay, so you can see how off track this individual is. So, this is about how you looked at an AI summary to determine when the 1944 scenario was developed. And then you ignored everyone else's counter-argument. Okay, you completely lost the train of thought. Videos 1 and 2, maybe video 1 was a little bit about that. Video 2 was not about that. It's clear that you had ignored even looking at the video, and I expect you not to even look at this one. That's what I expect. Okay. So talk about ignoring counter arguments. You're just ignoring everything except for the little thing that I never even saw that you expected me to answer. Apparently, you demanded that I clear this up. That's the impression that I get. Okay. It's an edge case. You're picking on the edges. You're eating the cheese rind is what you're doing to see if you can find something wrong with the cheese. I made it very clear I was moving the discussion to video, which was about unsupported claims regarding AI and the demonstration of trustworthiness and quality of AI. That's what these videos were about. It was not about your question, not what I was doing up here. Okay. So what I think is you're ignoring the main point because you want to get a pinprick on me or in and get cheered by the tribe. That's what you're doing. Okay? Make yourself feel good. That's what you care about. You don't care about the original argument. You never had addressed it at all. And that's demonstrated in your follow-up question because your follow-up question decided to ignore what I said and say, so just to be completely clear here, you still have not found, now let's emphasize this word still. You still have not found any actual evidence for your claim that the 1944 scenario was being play tested in 2011. Okay, that was never anything that I promised to do to find concrete evidence. It was never something that I said I would do. Now, apparently you challenged me to do it and you think I ignored you, but it was never my intention. Once I started these videos, this whole issue is a complete side issue anyway. It was just somebody trying to gang up and try to find something wrong with my reasoning, as if that makes the quality of the 1944 scenario acceptable. It's still not acceptable, okay? It's badly done. And if it wasn't done with any extra play testing, it's even worse. So there's your answer. However, I did find plenty of evidence of 1944 scenarios all the way back to the year 2000 And you've got to remember that this game has a long history. So it's certainly easy to project that if 1944 scenarios were considered 26 years ago for TK, then certainly parallel scenarios were under consider and probably drawn up in that period of time, and certainly before 2023 when this game was published. Okay, so if that's not a satisfactory answer, I really don't care, because I have a feeling that as soon as you heard this, if you actually listened this far, you're going to shut the rest of the video off because you really don't care about what I'm trying to say. All right, so there we go. So we get more of a hostile reaction, a more protective reaction, and then the openness that was claimed, it's not really there. It's actually there's no real collaboration. It's just the presentation of such. Why does this happen? Okay, well, these are normal factors. This isn't anything that anyone needs to take personally. Some people have a psychological need for safety that's above and beyond those of others. Tends to be that if a group is threatened, the group is going to protect itself. And when it's a small, cohesive group about a particular topic, that's when I mentioned it as a tribe. But nation states will also try to protect themselves. The threat or reputation of or the identity that a group might have, that this is the greatest game of all time. I happen to know the person who criticized me for mentioning the play testing or lack thereof is one of the ones who's also chimed in over and over again, ad nauseum, I might add, about how great this game is, as if 12 years plus 12 years before that wouldn't have polished the game to a gemstone without this guy's help. It could have been anybody developing this that would be able to get to that stage. So it's no great accomplishment. Okay. The only great accomplishment I will admit to is the fact that he managed to steer the ship and eventually get it into port. Okay. About 7 years late. Okay. I'm not really happy about the fact that this is so late. I am happy about the fact that for 95% of the game, it's a quality product. But SK was not well developed because I happen to believe that it was under play tested. And that's why these things are coming up about the stuff that they slap on at the end. Now, Thomas at least admits that, there's a lot of rules I've been considering over the decades, but I can't say that we play tested them, so I'll put them in as optional rules. That's fine. Okay. And if the scenario for 1944 had not been play tested, it should have been called an optional scenario. If it had been play tested, then it belongs in the scenario book. That's how it works. All right. So this is what happens then. There's avoidance of accountability. We can't admit that there's been a mistake, and everything's okay here. Don't look around. Here, speak, see no evil. We will protect the status quo. So eventually we got some of these markers, dismissal without engagement. I had some hostile remarks about stuff like that. A really ridiculous meme about me that was put up. Simply just to, I suppose, insult and injure. There was absolutely no point to it. But, that's okay. These are standard forum behaviors. People engage in this. Very few people actually shift the debate to something that's actually about legitimacy. They shift it to something like this. And this happens all the time. And that's just how it is. I'm not participating in it. That's why I'm making these as videos. All right. If you want to label the criticism as biased or hostile, if you guys want to retreat into some internal evaluation of the situation and ignore everything that's coming from outside the group, outside the tribe, you can do that. Nothing I'm going to say is going to stop you from acting like this. All right. What else do I have to say about this? Okay. So anyway, that's where we're at. So we have a closed system dynamic here. And input from the outside is filtered out or disregarded. Internal consensus replaces external testing, more investigation. Generally speaking, the curiosity is only aroused in a few individuals. Only a few individuals will rise to the top and say, well, let's really investigate this. I don't want to listen to somebody say, everything's okay, everything's cool, I'm going to find out for myself. Some people will do this. Most people will not. All right. And in these tribal situations, the narrative stability outweighs the need or just the action of truth seeking. Okay, there's consequences though. You stifle the innovation. Uh, your credibility eventually will be eroded because outside data will still come into play. Other people will still question these things. I won't be the last person to question why the 44 scenario looks so ridiculous with the illegal setups. And yes, they're illegal in the sense of the continuity of the game. I'm not going to accept these arguments that any setup is illegal because there's no setup rules. This is an example of a guy who all he wants to do is find something wrong with what I'm saying. Doesn't consider the fact that, well, Mark, maybe by illegal you meant consequential, but technically not legal, and have a discussion about that. No, this guy couldn't be bothered to do that, right? You know why? Because it was more important for him to try to score points on the rind of the cheese than it was to actually take a bite out of it and see exactly what it tasted like. This is so typical. Happens in these chat rooms. I've seen it in chat rooms. I see it a lot in forums, and this is why these are mind eroding things to participate in. I have a number of friends who will not participate in forum discussions for this very reason. They consider them mind eroding. They might come to BGG, for example, and get some rules clarifications. They may engage in such, right? But when it comes to the rest of the razzmatazz and nonsense, where you're not only just eroding your credibility, but eroding your minds by engaging in it, you know, I mean, ultimately you get the eventual self-destruction, a sense of the, let's not say literal, but figurative circling firing squad. Well, basically you start hammering at other individuals for the little bits of minutia that absolutely don't make any difference to the play of the game. But I can tell you the value of the game is impacted by this crappy 1944 scenario. And I know that I know at least one of my critiquers at least agrees with that. And whether or not the developer is going to do anything about it, should take it from a larger context, a context that's larger than the tribe, larger than his personal ego, and fix it. So, I think that's it. Am I done with these slides? I think, yeah. Well, I might be a couple more. Let's see. All right. So, nothing wrong with circling the wagons. It's really important, but if you're going to do it on the basis of an egoic reaction to something, it may not be the best thing to do. If you're going to deny that that's what you're doing, the denial of the tribe is the interesting thing that came out of. That's really the final straw here. Is like, well, there's no tribe. There's just a bunch of people that don't like you. I mean, I'm not going to discount the possibility that those people also don't like me, but I'm not going to sit here and think that that's the only conclusion that can be drawn from this. You're going to create a closed system by doing this. You will stifle innovation. There are countless examples of this happening, where the consensus principle believes and believes and believes in something for years, decades, months, years, decades, until it's demonstrated that the whole time they've been wrong. So that's how it works. Okay. Closed systems don't self-correct because they don't allow for external input. Open systems do. So if I were you, I'd try to maintain an open mind about all of this and not join the clique, not join the tribe. That's it. Finished with this, and I'm happy to move on to other, probably more entertaining videos. At least I hope so. the series like this is a little bit drab for the clientele or audience or whatever you want to call it that I currently have, but it may attract others. So we'll see. All right. Bye. Thanks for watching.